Hello and welcome to Through the Telescope, the podcast that puts the lens on astronomy. I'm Rose Waugh and I'm an astrophysicist and science communicator.
And I'm Elliott Bruce, and I'm neither of those things, but I'll be trying to find out why we should even care about astronomy. We'll be exploring some of the big topics in the field in little manageable pieces and have some fun along the way.
So, whether you know your red giants from your red shifts, or you're not quite sure what the difference between astronomy and astrology actually is, join us as we launch ourselves into the cosmos and try not to burn up on re-entry. Through the Telescope is sponsored by Pic Astro, the astronomy and astrophotography image sharing app, dedicated to your images of the cosmos no matter what stage you are on your journey around the universe. No ads, spam, or fake accounts.
So, Ro, that's always how I open. So, Ro, today we're talking about Mercury, also known as the worst planet in the solar system. So,
that is your opinion.
That is my opinion, and today you're going to try and shift that opinion.
I would say I'm going to try and change it, but I'm not, because I don't think you're for changing.
Well, we'll see. Let's see if Mercury can be redeemed. Okay, give me the lowdown on Mercury, the essential statistics.
The stats.
The stats.
Well, it's pretty small. That's not a surprise. If we think about it in terms of its size relative to Earth, it's about 0.38 Earths.
Okay. It's how many Earths in mass?
0.055.
0.055 Earth, so less than 6% of the mass of Earth. Well, okay, so...
Yeah.
We're pretty insignificant in the solar system, and this is even more insignificant.
If you wanted it in kilograms, though, to make it sound bigger, it's 3.3 times 10 to the 23 kilograms.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how much I weigh, but it's a lot less than that. So
its gravity is 0.38 times that of Earth's.
Ooh.
So you're going to be feeling quite light walking around. It takes about 88 days to orbit.
Yeah.
Because it's a year. So
3 months.
Yeah.
Roughly. Okay.
So
it passed 4 years.
Pretty quick.
4 Mercurian years into our 1 year.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing. Taking our sweet time. Saying that, though, its rotational period, so the time for 1 day on Mercury, is about 59 days.
Jeez.
So
more than half a year.
It's got long days.
I don't know if I could wake up one day and then half a year later go to bed. You know?
Yes, I mean, you have enough difficulty waking up anyway, but we'll not make any comments about that. It's relatively hot.
What does relatively mean?
Well, its surface temperature is maximum is about 430 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
700 Kelvin. I'm afraid I couldn't tell you what that is in Fahrenheit.
Probably hot.
But equally, it can be pretty cold on the other parts.
Okay, I was going to
sides.
ask if that was like a summer winter thing or like a light dark thing, but so it's a day
well,
and
it's
night.
not got any atmosphere, so not really. So it's not really very good at keeping its heat. So yeah.
So there's a 400 degrees C difference in temperature between midnight and midday, roughly.
Well, more. The minimum temperature is minus 170 degrees C.
Sorry, I can't do maths. 600 degrees.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So yeah, pretty wild.
Hmm.
And the atmosphere that it does have, actually, it's got a lot of oxygen, 42%.
That's more than we have. We've got 21.
It's also got 29% sodium.
Right. So
Wild card.
I was thinking when you said that it had quite a lot of oxygen, maybe we could go and live there, apart from the appalling temperatures.
And lack of atmosphere, really.
Well, yes, now that you're saying that a third of the atmosphere is sodium, the metal, I'm not so sure. Is that just because there are like 3 molecules?
Possibly.
Right.
22% hydrogen, 6% helium, 0.5% potassium.
You need your potassium.
Yeah. Eat your bananas, kids.
Exactly.
I hate bananas. Yeah, so there's some vital stats on Mercury. You seemed more interested in them than I expected you to, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think because I just think of it as really small.
I mean, it is.
And it's like, isn't it kind of the same sort of size as our moon?
Yeah.
Which So, here's my... So, I appreciate the moon goes around the Earth, which goes around the sun. Mm-hmm. The Earth also goes around the moon. It just doesn't really, because, they co-rotate around a point which is inside the Earth.
Yes.
So, clearly, we are the thing that the moon orbits,
yes,
as it were. Mercury goes around the sun. There's nothing else for it to go around, right? But if the moon hopped out of the Earth's orbit, it would suddenly become a planet, would it? Is that...
Well, if it had a stable orbit, then yes.
Okay.
But because people are funny, ignoring all the problems that we would have if the moon just decided for
We've already
whatever
talked about this
reason
once.
to orbit the sun rather than us,
Yeah.
we would probably still call it the moon.
Yes.
Because we would be like, that's our moon, and we'd be probably pretty enraged about it.
Can we have our moon back? But, so, here's my controversial take.
But, equally, if we had been outside of that system and we didn't see that happen, yeah. Right.
Call it a planet.
Well,
So,
yeah.
here's my thinking, right? Either...
It meets the conditions that the IAU sets to be a planet, so it could be.
So, what I want to propose is either we live in a binary planetary system that orbits the sun, us and the moon together, both planets, because it's the same size as Mercury, right? So, if we were going around with Mercury, that's a planet, right? Mm-hmm. Or Mercury is the sun's moon.
Right. So...
I've heard that. So, right, before...
Well, actually, I was expecting a daft question. And
you got one.
Well, no, I didn't, actually. I don't think I did. Okay, I think it is daft that we would say that Mercury is the moon of the sun, right? That one, I'm not getting on board with that. But actually, I think you do raise a good question about our situation. The moon is very different to other moons in the solar system, in that its size relative to the planet that it orbits is huge. We're going to chat about the moon in more detail later, so in other episodes. So let's not diverge too much from Mercury. But with that said, I do think that there is actually a lot of sense in your comment about a binary planetary system, much more than you thought there was when you made the statement.
Well, the other thing about the binary planetary system is if the IAU hurries up and reclassifies it as such, given that they reclassified Pluto out of being a planet, put the moon into being a planet.
Yeah, they won't do that,
But if they do that pretty quickly, then by the time the Artemis mission lands humans on the moon, that'll be the first time humans have landed on the planet.
that's true.
Because it wasn't technically a planet before, but then
Yeah.
it will be.
Okay, now we've got into the silly.
Okay.
Got into the sillies now.
So you've given me the rundown of the stats. It's got some sodium in its atmosphere. It's really hot and really cold at the same time, and it's very fast round its sun, our sun too, and it's very slow to go around itself. But is there anything else that means that I should care about Mercury?
Is this back to the is Mercury the most dull planet ever question?
Pretty much. Have you got any other things to woo me over to Mercury Club?
Well, okay, so some cool facts maybe.
Okay.
Or they may be interpreted as cool facts.
Okay.
The planet's shrinking. So you think it's small now?
It's getting worse.
It is estimated that the planet's about 9 miles smaller than it was 4 billion years ago. So it's a slow process. It's not fast. Everything in astronomy really is pretty slow.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's thought that it's happening because the core of the planet, which is made of iron, is cooling,
Okay.
turning into a solid. And that's reducing the volume of the planet.
Because a solid is slightly more dense than a liquid. Is that the...
Because solids are
Guess also it's
generally...
colder, so... So it's right next to the
more
sun,
dense.
but it's getting colder. I mean, that's a stupid question in and of itself. Just because it's near to a hot thing doesn't mean it's going to get hotter or colder. But why is it getting colder? Or it's just the core that's getting colder?
The core is cooling and solidifying.
And it's...
Well, that's what...
It's cooling over 4 billion years, so I guess it's...
Well, it is inside the planet in
a
high pressure environment, so
Yeah.
cooling of these things does take a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that also means that you're going to get wrinkles and crinkles and bumps, are you?
Yeah, presumably. Presumably it's not going to be a completely symmetric kind of process. It also has the most craters in the solar system
Interesting.
that we know of. It's got over 760 that have been classified so far. And the largest one is called the Caloris Basin, which is a huge crater that's been left by some sort of meteor impact, which possibly happened about 3.8 billion years ago. Basically, it doesn't really have an atmosphere, so it's pretty useless at protecting
I was going to
itself.
ask, is it because there's no atmosphere or just because there's lots of stuff near it to hit it?
Yeah. I mean, without an atmosphere, anything that, heads your way is going to hit the planet. Whereas at least, if you have a thick atmosphere like we do, a lot of it burns up before it even gets anywhere near you. But yeah, the biggest one is about 960 miles in diameter. So that's about 1,500 kilometres. Which, I know you like maps.
I do.
So
I'm trying to think, how big is that?
this
I can't...
Big enough to fit part of Europe, not all of it.
Okay.
But, say, Portugal to Germany.
Oh, okay, so
Would fit inside.
Western Europe plus half of Europe.
And
probably in
it's been
diameter.
estimated that the meteor that caused it was at least 62 miles long, which is about 100 kilometres.
It is kind of crazy how, that's...
I don't know why
say-
I've said miles first in either of those
know.
cases, because I don't work
It's
professionally
probably
in
because
miles.
do your notes come from NASA or something?
No, I just wrote them down. I don't know why I wrote them down in that order.
So. But that's also, I find it crazy with meteorite or meteor impact. Which one's the right one? Meteorite?
Meteorite.
Because meteorite impacts when it's like 62 miles long and it then decimates 963 miles. See, I'm now in miles. But 963 miles. It's like huge. Even though, I don't know how far 62 miles is, but it's pretty big as a lump of rock hurtling towards you.
Yeah.
But it's then over 10 times. And that's just the crater, not even the devastation, I guess.
Yeah. There's actually, or at least it's thought, there's actually a piece of Mercury here on Earth.
Is that
like
probe?
The planet.
Or did we land something, scoop it up and come back?
Well, in 2012, a meteorite, a green one, specifically, was found being sold at a street market in Morocco.
Okay.
And after some people studied what it was made of, its composition, the astronomers that did that thought it might have come from Mercury because it matches the data that we have on Mercury from the MESSENGER probe.
Okay.
So yeah, weird. So it was being suggested it might have arrived after one of the many impacts that happened on Mercury and sent bits of it into space, and then it ended up coming to Earth. Other random facts that might be of interest. It has actually got water ice.
Okay.
On it, at its poles.
And are its
poles... And they stay frozen.
Okay.
Because they're always in the dark.
Right.
Because of the tilt of the planet.
I was going to ask, is this ice at 420 degrees?
No.
Or
it's presumably
Celsius,
at 107 minus 170 degrees.
Celsius.
Yeah. Also, random fact that's not at all really, valuable, but the Babylonians called it Naboo.
That's where...
and I liked that,
That's where Emperor Palpatine comes from.
I thought I'd tell you that.
Spoilers. Oh, also, I need to make a correction. In a previous episode, I said that the Sarlacc pit was in a prequel, but it's actually in Return of the Jedi, I think. It's in one of the original trilogy. Or a prequel, if you like the new Disney films, I guess. That's not how prequels work, but...
Yeah. Funny, I feel like I used to know all that kind of stuff. And then I had a kid, and now... Now
you know a lot about Hey Dougie, and not so much about Star Wars.
That's true. But also just, you just get bad at remembering certain things. Do you find that?
Yeah.
It's like I can place it. I can place things in that's Star Wars and whatever, but I couldn't actually differentiate between them anymore. I mean, they are all kind of similar, let's be honest.
That's fine.
But, yeah, anyway.
Well, I have a confession, Drew.
Yeah, have you got some interesting facts to bring to the table?
I do have... I tried to psych myself up. Not
Did
psych
you?
myself. I tried to hype myself up for Mercury, knowing we were going to talk about Mercury. And I found out about the Bepi Colombo mission, which is a joint ESA, European Space Agency, and JAXA, Japanese Space Agency. I'm not entirely sure what the X stands for.
Yeah, I actually don't know what JAXA stands for. I must have seen it written down somewhere, but you just kind of know them as JAXA, don't you, really? Same with all of them, really, though. I feel the same about NASA. It's NASA.
Yeah.
It's not whatever.
Anyway, Bepi Colombo is heading towards Mercury. In fact, I think it's there just now, but it's doing a few flybys.
Excellent.
It's meant to be going into orbit in 2025. So it's done a couple of flybys so far, but it's there just now, or it will be flying by this year, 2023. But it's actually... Do you know where the name comes from?
No.
It's actually named after a man called Bepi Colombo.
Really?
Yeah. So he is a very clever sounding dude. He is an Italian engineer, mathematician-y type who basically he went to a conference held by NASA on their Mariner 10 mission they're going to do. And he said, because they were just going to send it off into space and it would go past Mercury and that'd be it. And they'd be like, we've got one time to have a look at it.
It's gone.
Yeah. And he was like, look, I've done the maths, that's what I do. Why don't you go round Venus and if you do a cheeky little slingshot round Venus, you can then end up doing 3 flybys, all for the price of 1. And NASA were like, that sounds far better than just shooting it out past Mercury.
Yeah.
So that's Bepi Colombo, and I think it's something like it's the first time that a spacecraft used such a gravitational slingshot to reach another planet.
That's cool.
I think there have been previous ones to do different things. I think maybe like Voyager or something. But yeah, that's Bepi Colombo, and it's two different probes joined together, but one by ESA, one by Jackson.
Good job to the person for that, because 3 is definitely better than 1. Nice.
Yeah. And also, Bepi Colombo is a cool name.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at the history of people looking at Mercury as well. And it turns out a lot of the history was people just looking at Mercury through a telescope. Because that's how a lot of history happens before you could launch things into space.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw some things and they were like, oh yeah, we've worked out it goes around the sun really quickly, and so we just assume it's a rock. We're not that interested. It's kind of what it seemed like. It seemed like they were a bit like me and like
I was
pretty
going to say,
boring.
that's pretty on board with
Pretty
your
boring.
ideas.
Anyway, at some point, people get their heads screwed on and they're like, we should probably check it out just in case. And so a lot of the stuff that you've talked about in this episode originally comes from the Mariner 10 mission.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a bit. And so that was launched in 1973 and got there in 74, 75, thanks to Bepi Colombo. And, they found stuff that made sense from what they'd seen on Earth, but also some things that didn't make sense. And so then that was the mid-70s. And then they don't send another thing until the Messenger probe they launch it in 2004. It then goes past Mercury a couple of times in 2008, 2009, so 4 or 5 years later, and then it orbits in 2011 to 2015, which I think just goes to show that it can be a bit of a faff getting to Mercury. So
yeah, with it being so close to the sun, it's challenge.
Yeah. So it's speedy going round is one thing. And then, like you say, it's very close to the sun. So if you're trying to get towards Mercury, you're getting closer and closer to the sun, so you're speeding up and up and up. So if you kind of miss it by a little bit, all of that area is dominated by the sun's gravitational pull. And then to try and brake once you get there, Mercury doesn't really have a proper atmosphere, so you can't try and skim through it and slow your spaceship down with sort of atmospheric drag. There's not really any sort of gravitational stuff to help you, so you just got to throw a bunch of you've got to ignite a lot of fuel that you've bothered to take with you in the first place just to try and slow you down. Which you feel like maybe solar sails that we mentioned in the last episode might come in handy. I don't know.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to land on a planet, you have a lot more complications.
Yeah.
than just orbiting, which is already a difficult task.
Yeah. But my favourite thing about Messenger is, I don't know about you, but when I hear, oh, they've got a probe called Messenger going to Mercury, it's like, oh, they've clearly thought, oh, it's the messenger of the gods. Let's just call it Messenger. That's nice, right? You know, that's all you need, right?
That was what I always assumed it was.
Yeah, so the Apollo programs, that's all fine, right? But Messenger's actually an acronym.
Oh no!
I don't know how it happened that it
no.
just aligned that they happened to be able to spell out Messenger with their acronym. Do you want to have a vague guess? It's also a really long word for an acronym as well. Do you want to guess what it
Astronomy
stands
and
for?
acronyms.
It's not just astronomy, but yeah, it seems pretty bad.
Messenger.
It's a long word. It's got a lot of letters in it to try and crowbar a word in. You're never gonna.
No, I'm really never gonna guess. You're gonna have to tell me.
It's also one of those great ones. It's all caps, but it's also one of those ones where it doesn't actually. There isn't a word for every letter. So,
oh no!
So it's Mercury, surface, space, environment, geochemistry, and ranging.
That's not even a sentence.
No,
and
maybe
ranging
you put probe
what?
at the back. At the end. I don't really know. So yeah, so enjoy that one. They've got EN from environment, I think, to get, or maybe GE, like the E as well. For yeah, so that's unfortunate.
And there I was, living in my happy little bubble, just thinking Messenger, yeah, that makes sense, because Mercury, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just really well and truly popped that bubble.
You're welcome. I don't know why you can't just call it the messenger. Like, for a start, there's been Mariner 10 and now Messenger. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't even need to come up with...
I don't know.
There's not that many probes.
Astronomy seems to have a history of being like, oh, I've got a good idea. Yeah. Let's make it into an acronym. No, that was never a good idea. That was never a good idea.
Just call it a cool name.
And now, it's almost like expected, you know? Like, you go and you sit in talks and conferences and people do it for, like, new probes and for, like, code that they've written, you know, for, like, you know, like, big codes. And they get stupid names. And all of them, they're all, like, an acronym. Because that's what we do now, and it's funny. It's not funny.
I was going to ask, is it like a sort of noughties thing or something? Because... You know, now, maybe it's just different, but like the Artemis missions, right, they're the next big thing, right? I guess it's very different, though, because that's like a bit more public-facing in a way. Like, I assume Artemis doesn't stand for, like, actually returning to the moon or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just call it a cool name. Messenger's fine without it being an acronym. Anyway, you'd be glad to know it crashed deliberately. They extended it for some period of time, and then they crashed it into the planet. But also, that's where a lot of pictures of Mercury come from. Is Messenger. It's like looked at pretty much everything, but not everything. That's why Bepi Colombo's heading off.
Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it? That's one thing about the solar system, you know, is that we have these images of what the planets look like. And, you know, you can go on to Google or any search engine of your choice and type in Mercury, Mars, whatever, Neptune, and you'll get, you know, a few to a couple of images depending on which planet it is that you're looking at. But, it's so weird because these photos that we have, we actually don't have that many, really, in the grand scheme of things. We all recognise the planets from just a few photographs of them, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it also makes image searching difficult, I guess, because you've got that image, that's it. Can't really unless you get an artist's depiction. But it's basically just copying the image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember you used to be able to, on Google Earth, probably still can, you could visit the moon and Mars as well, which was a bit weird.
Yeah, I used to enjoy that.
Yeah. Guess they probably didn't have so much street view on either. But Mercury, not super popular with probes.
Difficult to get to.
Yeah.
And, I think that whilst I don't think it's, incredibly boring, I think it probably has a lot of interesting things that we just don't know anything about yet. I think it, is never going to be a high target body in the solar system.
Yeah.
When there are other things out there that have, more universal appeal. And trying to get a mission to go to any planet or dwarf planet or whatever takes money and resources away from going to other ones.
Yeah.
So if it's ending up in a bidding war against somewhere else, it might not stand as good a chance.
Yeah.
It's just maybe less attractive, and with it being more difficult, or one of the more difficult planets to get to, that doesn't help.
Yeah, I guess it's probably because it's so low priority, as it were, for the reasons that you give them. It's also like you're going to send, so Mariner 10 was the 70s. Then as they've gone through that data and worked out what they care about and thought about things, and they've come up with new questions to answer and new data to gather, etc. And they've sent off Messenger, and that's like 2010-ish. And now we've got another one coming up in the mid-2020s. You wonder if they're just going to wait for Bepi Colombo to have done its stuff and then work out what they care about with Mercury, and then send another one like a decade or two later.
You never rush to any planet or anything because it's so difficult and expensive, and it takes so much time. You want to make sure that you already know ahead of time, like you say, what the questions are that you want to answer. They need to be very firmly decided and, typically quite quantifiable. So yeah, it can often take decades to go back somewhere.
Yeah, I do find that kind of. I mean, it's not weird, but I do, as an individual, I guess it seems kind of crazy of just how much planning. I know this sounds completely stupid, but how much planning does it do, like space missions, where they've got like itineraries of, is that the right word, of what they are gonna do. Like, I can't remember who it was now, but I remember somebody working on some kind of space probe, and he interviewed, and they're like, maybe it was for a Mars rover, and they've got staff working on it 24/7 because they can run it 24/7. So there's like 3 different locations around the world or something, with sort of 3 different like sort of rover managers, whatever the word is, that have their own sort of team or are in control of people, and they're sort of like the scientific. If people say, "Look, there's a rock over there. Is that a cool rock?" Then they have to make the decision. Yeah, that's a cool rock. And then in 8 hours' time, they change shifts to another person to make a different cool rock-based decision. And that's like during day-to-day operations. That's not even the whole planning to get it up there. Then when it gets there, what it's looking at, as well as all the instruments that are going on board it.
And because so much time and effort and so many people's careers and so much money and blah, blah, blah has gone into making it and then getting it up there, people understandably do not want to waste a single second.
No.
And that's how you end up with things like the story that you just told. Because why waste any of that time or those resources
Yeah.
that it's taken you to get there, you know. So what do we think then? Is Mercury not quite as dull as you thought it was?
Well, I think maybe the subtitle for this episode should maybe be "Sizes and Everything," you know, because it's got quite a lot going on, and part of it is actually caused by the lack of size.
Yeah.
In a way, you know, like no size, or you know, it's the size of our moon. Also got no atmosphere, so it's been hit by an awful lot of things, a bit like our moon, I guess, and it's cooling, shrinking, and you know, it's now getting little wrinkly bits on its surface, I imagine. Really hot, really cold. Water there. It's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I'm not moving there anytime soon.
I'm glad.
But yeah.
Okay, well, I suppose we'll have to look at the other ones and see, maybe at the end of the solar system, if you can rank them in order of your favourites.
See if Mercury gets bumped up from number 8 to at least number 7. But yeah, and it's where Emperor Palpatine
in that
comes
case, do you want to give me your ranking right now?
Okay.
And see if it changes.
Okay, so there are 8. Okay, so number 1. Okay, number 1 I'm going to say Earth, because Earth is quite special for lots of biology-based things, i.e. biology. Then number 2 is Jupiter, because it just looks amazing. You know, I love the red spot. Mm-hmm. It's stripy. It's great.
Can I pause you there?
Okay.
To point out that the sentence that you gave me just there for why you like Jupiter is identical to the one that I heard our kids saying when you asked them a few days ago, what's your favourite planet? And they said Jupiter, and you said, why? And their response was, it's got a big red spot.
Yeah, well, you know, you could say that is because the reasons that I like Jupiter are childish, infantile, etc. Or you could say that people's love for Jupiter is just sort of an intrinsic, natural thing, you know, which is enjoyed by all humans, including tiny 3-year-olds. So, you know. Next up is Saturn.
Okay.
Because it's got rings.
Right.
And proper rings.
Yes.
Even if you're telling me Jupiter's got rings, it doesn't need rings. Then probably Mars.
Okay.
Although, I don't know, Mars is probably... It's not that cool, is it? I mean, the War of the Worlds is pretty cool, but it's just kind of dusty, dead planet, isn't it? But I'm still going to put it number 4. Venus, number 5, because it's got some stuff going on. It's very hot, right? It's green, very bright in the sky. Pretty good, toxic. Number 6. So 6, 7, 8, what have I got left? I've got Mercury, Uranus and Neptune. I'm going to say Uranus. First of all, its name is funny. Second of all, it's got a ring, right? It's kind of a proper ring.
Yes, the rings around Uranus.
Yes. And you know what? I was going to say Neptune, Mercury, but maybe after this episode they can be joint. So
Whoa. I
don't really care that much about Neptune either. But
okay, well, thank you for your pre-tour ranking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see if it changes or not.
Yeah. I would be surprised if Neptune gets up to number 1, but I guess we'll find out.
Never say never.
So, Ro, we've now had a look at Mercury, the planet. Turns out, not dull, I would say.
Not dull, yeah.
Possibly still the dullest planet because there's only 8 planets, so, one of them's got to be the dullest, right?
True, regardless of however many planets there are.
Yeah. One of them's got to take up that place. But whilst you've given me all the fun facts of Mercury, I've obviously gone away and had a look at some other things about Mercury. And you might not know, but actually there's an element called Mercury.
Yeah, I trust a chemist to bring that one up.
Yeah. Pub quiz. What is the element for Mercury?
You want to ask that again?
Okay. What's the elemental symbol for Mercury in the periodic table and beyond?
Hg.
Yeah. Do you know what it stands for?
No.
Where it comes from?
Latin.
No. Greek.
Greek, okay.
Hydrogyros, maybe, which means...
Interesting, yes, I can guess where this is going.
Yeah, so it means like water silver, kind of like quicksilver.
Uh-huh.
Probably heard the term quicksilver before, because that's a cool old term. But, yeah, apparently we get the term Mercury from the planet. So the planet is the fastest orbiting planet, right?
Yes.
So it's very speedy. It's named after
Mercury,
the Roman version of Hermes.
The slowest delivery service.
Yes, yes, the messenger of the gods, every DPD. So I think basically they were like, this is very fast. And it's a bit like Mercury, the fast planet.
Right. It's a tenuous link.
It's a tenuous link, but it gets more tenuous, but not so much. Alchemy. That's the answer. So it's the history of chemistry is alchemy, and the history of astronomy is astrology.
Yes.
And they're both linked. And it seems that the alchemists decide there are 7 metals that we know about, until we found out about an 8th one in classical times. Do you know what those 7 metals might be? One of them is Mercury.
Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Silver.
Mm-hmm.
Iron.
Yeah.
That's 4 then, if you're including Mercury.
Yeah.
How many did you say there were? 7?
7.
Lead.
Mm-hmm.
Are they all elements?
They are. The other ones are copper and tin.
Okay, right.
So we've got gold, silver, lead, copper, iron, tin and mercury are the classical metals.
Right.
There are 7
none
of them.
And they didn't have alloys in classical times.
Well, they did have alloys, but they
weren't metals.
They knew how to make alloys by mixing metals. So I think they weren't just like, we dig up an ore and then get bronze out of it. But happens to be, you probably didn't know this, but in ancient times there were 7 planets. And that's because they didn't. They're not actually planets.
Oh dear! So they decided,
So actually,
they're obviously all connected in some weird thing.
Yes. So
I think we should just take the time to apologise to any listeners because our dog has decided to join this this part of the podcast. Yep. So if you hear any snuffling, that's the spaniel.
Yeah.
So they decided each of these metals obviously was in some way interconnected in the universe to one of the planets. Yeah.
Exactly. The thing is they're not actually all planets as we know them. So the word planet comes from wandering.
Yeah.
It's like
it's a
wandering
star.
stars.
Yeah.
And so that also includes the sun and the moon as planets.
Right.
So,
Yes.
which is why people might be like, they didn't know about 7 planets. What about the ones further out? Yeah, they didn't. So they've added on the sun and the moon.
Yes.
And so then each of these is then associated with a metal. So like gold is the sun and silver is the
Obviously.
moon.
Yes.
There's
Those two are
also
obvious.
7 days of the week, and they've also
So-
got those connected.
So what have we
'cause
got
solar
left?
patterns.
So is it Earth, Iron?
No, Earth is not a
interesting.
planet because it's not a wandering star.
Okay,
confusing.
right, yes. Now you say that, that's obvious. I don't know why I didn't think
yes.
of that.
So,
right, okay.
No, iron is, if you think of war, maybe.
So which... Oh, Mars, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah, Mercury is Mercury.
Yeah, okay. So
the other
Venus, which metals have we got left?
So we've done gold, silver, iron, mercury. So we've got tin, copper, and lead.
No.
Well,
Copper.
Copper's a bit green, so
Yeah, that was my
Venus.
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other ones are just, to me, seem pretty random. So tin is Jupiter, and lead is Saturn. And apparently, an old term for lead poisoning is Saturnism.
Right. Well, I mean, I suppose I'm not from them times.
No.
So maybe I don't value lead and tin as much, but they seem like pretty poor choices
Yes.
for Jupiter and Saturn. Like, if I could give any metal to, to the planets, they would be pretty low down my list of. They're not like a good award, It's not like, well done, here's your gold trophy. Here's your tin trophy. It doesn't quite.
I mean, I think also they're all a bit weird, aren't they? Because I think the alchemists are thinking you can take your metals and turn them
you
into
can make it all into gold, so it
and
doesn't
that
matter
kind of thing.
anyway.
So they've got some weird hierarchy and ancient knowledge that's all cack. But basically, eventually people are like, we're not going to call, like, lead Saturn anymore. We're going to call it lead. So
Right.
they all get their own names for the elements. Not that they necessarily know what elements are yet.
Oh,
But Mercury sticks around.
right.
People don't call it Quicksilver anymore.
No.
So that's a leftover bit of astrology and astronomy coming together.
How weird.
Yeah.
Saturnism.
Yeah.
That one's going to stick with me.
Well, I hope you don't get Saturnism at any point.
Me too. I hope not.
I mean, lots of people had mercury poisoning over the years because...
Yeah, well, I'm not a hatter, and hopefully
No.
all of our pipes have been replaced and we don't have any lead pipes left, so
I hope so.
hopefully I'm alright on both of those.
But yeah, mercury's weird as an element. It's the only metal that is... Well, it's only one of 2 elements that are liquid at
Yeah.
room temperature, etc. But you can use it to cure syphilis. You can't if you've got syphilis at home. Do not use mercury. But there's a whole bunch of things.
I'm just kind of feeling like, great news, we've cured your syphilis.
Bad
news, you've got mercury poisoning.
Yeah.
That seems a poor life choice. I'm just going to put that out there.
Syphilis, leprosy, also Emperor Qin Shi Huang, that I've probably mispronounced. He was like, that's the answer to eternal life.
Yes.
Probably helped push him over the edge.
Yes. Is it just kind of like the original chemotherapy? Kind of like kill it with fire. It's like, take this thing that's like really bad for life in general, and it'll get rid of your problem.
I think it's
It'll
just
give
magic.
you lots of other problems.
It's shiny, and it you can move it around. It's like shiny, heavy liquid. It's just magic. You know? I mean, what could it do to you? It's like a magic fluid. It's shiny. If I mentioned it's shiny, like, what could go wrong?
Well,
Oh, I'm mad, and I'm dead. So, yeah.
Well,
There you go.
the more you know.
So, turns out the element mercury owes a lot to astronomy. And
I
astrology.
always kind of assumed, without really explicitly thinking about it, that it would be the other way around, really.
Yeah.
I suppose.
But I guess astronomy kind of comes quite a long way before.
Yeah, I kind of forget how
Alchemy
young
as well.
chemistry is as
Yeah.
a subject, because it starts with alchemy, and that was pretty recent, really.
But yeah. So there's a little planet hiding in the periodic table, and it's actually the planet, basically.
Wow.
Thoughts for the day.
With that, we will let everyone enjoy the remains of their day.
Don't take Mercury, kids. So that just about wraps things up for this episode. Please, can we encourage you to subscribe to Through the Telescope wherever you find your podcasts, and if you like, you can leave us a nice positive review as well. It really helps the show and it makes it easier for more people to find us.
Feel free to send us any comments, questions, or suggestions of things or people you'd like to hear about or from in future episodes. Or perhaps to put yourself forward to chat about your own astro research or experiences. As always, you can find us on Instagram at Through the Telescope Podcast, or you can find me at astrophysicist_Rose. You can also find us on Twitter at The Telescope Pod, and you can contact us by email at throughthetelescopepodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we'd like to thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Bye.